Good afternoon from Malawi. This is Linda Dembo. I'm happy to join you and to join everybody who is online with us. Please introduce yourself in the chat box. And I'm hoping that we are going to have a fruitful discussion. And before we start, I would like to ask our first presenter for the meeting, Mr. Banda from the Malawi Department of Meteorology, to give us the first presentation. Most welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, hello everyone. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we are listening.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, so my name is Noel Banda. I'm a meteorologist as well as a climate specialist with the Department of Climate Change and Meteorological Services under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Climate Change. Yeah, so the presentation which we have today is just about the tropical cyclone Anna and the erratic weather patterns, as well as relating these now to climate change in a Malawian context. So this is just an overview of what we have today. So just look quickly at Malawi weather, then climate zones and the seasons, as well as our weather systems, just to have a hint of what Malawi weather it's like in a nutshell. So from there, we're just going to look at the cyclones as well as the cyclonic activities, and just to introduce to each other how these things happen. Then we'll look at the tropical cyclone Anna, which is the main topic today. Then we're also going to look at tropical cyclone Gombe, which just occurred recently. Then from there, I'll just look at now how are these related to climate change. Yeah, so this is wait, let me just close this. Yeah, so in summary, this is the Malawi weather like. So generally, Malawi is just characterized by changing wet and dry conditions, which are often also classified as the main rainfall system, rainfall season, which start from November to April. Then from there, we have our own winter, which is from May to August. Then now we have dry season, which is also hot season from September to October. So during this main rainfall season, which starts from November to April, that's where a lot of rainfall is expected over the country. So as you can see at this map, most rainfall is expected, especially over the southern higher grounds and some parts of lakeshore areas. So the country is divided into 5 climatological zones, which are northern areas. Then we have central areas, then lakeshore, as well as the southern high grounds in green, then the Shire Valley. So the Shire Valley, it's a low-lying area, as well as the Salima and some parts of lakeshore areas, which are prone to floods compared to high grounds. So the main rainfall bearing systems in the country, we have the intertropical convergence zone, which is ITZ. This is just a meeting of 2 air masses from northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, and this is our main rain bearing system in the country. Then also have the Congo air mass, which is the moist air from the Congo forest into the country, and it also brings a lot of rains in the country. Then there are tropical cyclones. These tropical cyclones, they develop in the Indian Ocean, then they'll start moving towards land, towards our land, and sometimes they may not reach Malawi, sometimes they reach the country. Then also have the convergence ahead of pressurized, which is mainly during the start of rainfall season, which is like in November. Then at the end of the season, we have the easterly waves, which marks the end of rainfall season in the country. So talking about tropical cyclones, these are rapid rotation systems which are characterized by a low pressure center, and they are usually associated with strong winds, heavy rains, as well as thunderstorms. So the cyclones, they usually develop in the ocean where they get their energy. So it's a combination of a lot of moisture and a lot of heat, which leads to the formation of the cyclones. So from there, as they are rotating, they start moving, following winds. So in our region here, as you can see at this picture showing the world map, they move from the east towards the west, where our land is. So on average, we have at least 9 systems which develop in the Indian Ocean, and at least 5 of them, they develop into tropical cyclones, and the 1 or 2, they might reach Malawi. So now let's look at the moderate cyclone, moderate storm, Anna, which developed on 20th, and it runs to around 25 January. So it was a deadly cyclone. So when we talk about cyclones, they are classified according to the wind strength. So we have the tropical disturbance, which is just about 28 knots or about 50 kilometers per hour. So they'll be intensifying with the wind speed. Then they'll be reaching to a tropical cyclone, which is about 118 to 165 kilometers per hour. Then they will even intensify further to a very intense tropical cyclones, which are about 212 kilometers per hour or about 115 knots. So moderate tropical storm Anna, it was just about 85 kilometers per hour. That's the maximum wind speed. So it affected Malawi, Madagascar, then it also affected Mozambique. So this one, you can see the graph that is showing the rainfall which was recorded just within 24 hours. That is starting from Sunday, the 23rd of January to Monday, 24th January. So you can see some areas like Masamanjat in Cholo, which is in the southern areas, had about 360 millimeters of rainfall. Mpemba, which is also over the south, had about 349, and most of these areas, they were in the southern parts, and yeah, they had quite heavy rainfall. So as a result of that, we had a flooding over the southern parts of the country, and quite heavy flooding also over the Shire Valley, which is a big river over southern Malawi, which takes its water from the lake and it drains it into Mozambique and eventually into Gombe, waiting for waters to dry up. So just soon before moving back to their houses, another tropical cyclone, which is Gombe, developed also in the Indian Ocean, and it moved towards Malawi also. So it brought a lot of rains, which also affected the already affected areas just after some few weeks. So this is the feedback in terms of rainfall. The highest was the Mikolongwe with Chiradzulu, which is over the southern areas, which had 207 millimeters. Then we had the Mpinda, which is in Palombe, had 195. Then Lujeri in Mulanje had 183 millimeters of rainfall. So this is quite a lot of moisture, which is also falling in places which were also already saturated with the water from Cyclone Anna. So this is just impacts of tropical cyclones over the country. So that's torrential rains and the damaging winds. So we had a lot of areas, especially over the Shire Valley, where there were like falling of electricity poles, we're talking about the flooding and the loss of lives over these areas. Then there are also like a lot of damages in terms of infrastructure as well as property. I've already talked about the electricity, and there were a lot of roads which were also washed away, including bridges. So yeah, the tropical cyclones, they brought a lot of havoc over the country. So this is just some news over the social media, just talking about the same tropical cyclones. And over time, we are seeing that these cyclones, they are now becoming even more intense than before, as well as we were having cyclones, of course, in the past, but most of them, they were not reaching Malawi. But now we are having tropical cyclones, which are even becoming intense and also hitting the country. And this is just being fueled by the global warming, because when talk about tropical cyclones, they first need a lot of heating in the ocean. So we are warming the globe, including our region here. So that's where we are seeing a lot of cyclones developing and intensifying, then making landfall over our country as well. So we are looking at the predictability of these extreme weather events in terms of climate change. So in the past, they were occurring, but now looking at the way they were occurring and compared to now, we are seeing that the way we are even predicting these cyclones is becoming even more difficult each and every passing day. And now here in Malawi, we had the late onset in terms of rainfall. It started somewhere in the most of the places, they had no rainfall even up to December, but the rains were supposed to start in November. So heavy rains now came in January. Then now the tropical cyclone hit us. So it was like the maize have not yet grown. Now the tropical cyclone comes in. So it was a disaster after a disaster. And we're also looking at the rainfall seasons are becoming shorter and shorter each and passing year. Then we have damaging winds and the thunderstorms, which are occurring more frequently compared to the years in the past. Then now there's these floods, which are also occurring each and every year. So we have so many challenges, of course, when we are now looking at monitoring these cyclones as well as the extreme weather events. Because first we need advancement in technology. But now, as a country, there are a lot of challenges in terms of advancement in the technology here when we're looking at monitoring the weather. Then we also have the capacity in terms of the weather experts here at the department. Most of them, they need a lot of training so that we can be able to track these extreme weather events. Then there's also a need to strengthen communication as well as dissemination channels in terms of cyclones and the other weather events like heavy rains as well as the thunderstorms. So there's an example whereby people were preparing for tropical cyclone Gombe while it has already hit their places. People were expecting to come, but because of lack of communication, a lot of people didn't get the communication, so they end up hit by floods while they were waiting for communication from us. But yeah, so we need to strengthen as well as this communication channel so that we can be able to help saving lives and properties. Yeah, thank you. That's the end of the presentation. The floor is now open for questions and comments through the chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noel. And really appreciate you opening up the discussion so that we have gotten what is the on the ground in Malawi and how the cyclone has really affected us and what needs to be done. And Noel is from the Department of Climate Change and Meteorological Services, and giving us that presentation, telling us what is really on the ground as of now, and what are the challenges that the department is actually facing in terms of monitoring and also predicting the cyclones, as was spelled out in his presentation. So we will open up for question and discussion later. I would now want to call upon maybe just to also trigger us more on this discussion to hear from on the national international response on preparedness and agent needs and the future. A presentation from Natasha Mbengo, the Principal Relief and Rehabilitation Officer from the Department of Disaster Management Affairs, so that we understand or appreciate how Malawi is actually preparing itself and how it is responding to the cyclones. Thank you so much. Natasha, it's your time.
Thank you very much, Linda. I'm Natasha Mbengo from the Department of Disaster Management Affairs. I'm going to give you a brief summary of the impact of Tropic Storm Anna and the response which is currently ongoing. Yeah, so Malawi was hit by Tropical Storm Anna on 24th, 25th January. And on 26th of January, the state president declared a state of disaster because the impact was so huge beyond the capacity of government to use its own resources to respond. So a total of 16 district councils and 2 city councils were affected due to the flooding, heavy flooding that were caused by the torrential rains. More than 940,000 people were affected, and this is translates to, it's equivalent to 227 households, and a total of 429 household people were affected, which is equivalent to 32,935,000 households. 18 people are still missing. 46 people lost their lives due to drowning, as well as injuries of the houses. They were falling on them, and 206 people reported to have sustained different degrees of injuries due to the impact of the storm. The internally displaced people were seeking refuge in 178 evacuation sites, and most of the evacuation sites were established in Shikwawa, Nsanje, Palombe, Mulanje, Mangochi, and Zomba, because these were the worst affected districts of the 16. So the map on my right, just showing the districts, and those with dark orange colors were the most affected, as I've indicated, and those with the light, this is peach or something color, were the least affected. Coming to the impact of the storm on other sectors, Before I give you the impact on the other sectors, just a brief. On my right is the route, the channel of the cyclone. As you can see, it went straight to the southern districts of the country, cutting through Chikwawa districts. And of the 5 waste affected districts, Chikwawa was the most affected, with a total of 84,000 households affected, followed by Msanje with 23,000 households, and the Mulanje came third to 18,000 households, whilst Palombe was 13,000 households, and the list was Choro. On the impact on sectors, in terms of health facilities, 29 of health facilities, especially in Chikwawa and in Sanje, were not accessible. And out of the 29, 27 were not functional at all because they were flooded severely, and there was a lot of mud that was deposited into these facilities, and also the medical supplies, including the equipment, were washed away. So literally they were not functional. And out of the 27 that were not functional, 7 were damaged. The roads sector was also heavily affected and had 7 sections of the main tarmac road, which runs through, from Banda down to Sanje, washed away. And the area was not accessible for at least a week or so. And other secondary roads were also washed away, and most of them were impassable. And this led to areas not accessible, and it was delayed provision of relief assistance to those affected areas because the trucks could not pass through the roads. They were severely damaged. In terms of protection, out of the 940,000 affected people, 109,000 were identified as vulnerable population because some were traumatized because it was their first time to have such an experience. Some because they lost property, they were so disoriented to the extent that they needed some support, psychosocial support. And out 169 households were in need. We also had a search and rescue team that was deployed, although it was delayed because of the road sections that were cut off, but they managed to provide their service. They rescued a number of people, but they could not rescue the 46 people that were dead because they were already found dead the time they were reaching to the places where they are. And still they could not trace the 18 people that are still missing. Most of the affected people, they are children, and I mean a big percentage of the affected people are children under 5 years old. And 131,000 of these children were affected. And in the displacement camps, there were over 3,000 children that needed support, and also 39,000 pregnant and lactating women were affected, out of which 1,000 were living in the camps and needed support. The energy sector was also affected, heavily affected, and the main power distribution lines and the generation plants were heavily damaged, and this led to a low generation of electricity, which dropped from 385 megawatts to 194 megawatts. If you remember, in the month of February, we had long load shedding hours, and this was due to the impact of tropical storm Anna. The agriculture sector was also hugely affected, with 106,000 households affected, and of which 18,000 lost their livestock, which included chickens, goats, and other small livestock. And the total crop hectare that was lost was 115,000. And this was, the crops included maize, soybeans, and other crops. For shelter, out of the displaced households, they all needed support in terms of shelter materials such as tents, tarpaulins, and other materials. And these people were also in camps, and they also, apart from the shelter materials, they also needed blankets and other necessities. For the food security, out of the 2021 affected, 80% was in need of food support. The rest had food stocks, and also they had other means of getting food. Coming to the operation affected and targeted by district, as indicated, we targeted mostly 80% of the affected households. And the reason being that the 20% would manage to survive on their own, because they had other means of livelihood sources. For example, having children on who are working, and others. They also had some savings in the bank and the other social networks that could provide support to them. In terms of the needs are so many up to now, because we haven't managed to meet all the needs of the affected people. But just to give you a prioritized list of needs, we have and food items, food that were in terms of process, cereals, maize, flour, rice, millet, and the process, beans, cowpeas, pigeon peas, even sipa, bonya soya pieces, and the non-food like blankets, water collection and storage materials, cooking utensils, and the other needs. For shelter, there is need for tents and tarpaulins. There is also need for psychosocial support, especially those who are overwhelmed by the impact of the storm. Up to now, some are still in the confused state, and they need psychosocial support for them to accept that it happened, they lost their property, but they have to put themselves together and move on. There's also need for sanitary facilities in schools, as well as the displacement site. In some cases, the situation is, in some areas, the situation is so bad to the extent that there are 2 or 3 mobile toilets, against a population of over 3,000 people. And this is the problem is so severe in Nsanja and Chikwawa districts. As you can see now, we have a secondary disaster of cholera outbreak because there's a lot of open defecation because of the inadequate sanitary facilities. There's also need for kitchen utensils. Most of the NFIs that are being provided are plastic, but these people need the pots and other cooking utensils. As you know, plastics, NFI kitchen utensils cannot be used for cooking. And now that the season is coming to an end, and the areas will dry up very soon, there's also need to provide the affected people, even especially those that were displaced, as they go back to their communities to reconstruct, they also need to replant. So it's also important to give them a startup to start from, like fertilizer and seeds, different types of seeds. Appropriation targeted by sector for the health sector, out of the total affected, the target is 70,000. First nutrition is 139, shelter and camp management 137. Education, out of the 398,000, only 233,000 affected people, and these include learners and teachers targeted for support. Agriculture, we are targeting everyone because almost all the households lost their crops in the field. For WASH, we're targeting out of the 592,000 affected, the target is 350, and protection 269. Whilst the food security is targeting, excuse me, 598 of the affected people. Coming to the financial requirements, these are the resource mobilization status. Let me mention that when the assessment was done, the Department of Disaster Management Affairs coordinated the development of the response plan. And this was done through the cluster system approach. Those sectors that are presented in the preceding slide, each one of them prepared a response plan depending on the impacts, targeting the numbers that are presented. So the total budget of the response plan is 72 billion in Malawian kwacha. These are kwachas. And out of the 72.6 billion, only 7.7 billion has been received, whilst 100 million kwacha was pledged, and there's a gap of 64.7 billion. So as you can see that most of the needs of the affected people are still unmet because we haven't managed to mobilize enough resources to meet all the needs. Although they are prioritized, but still could not manage to mobilize enough resources to meet all the needs. So we still have people who are hungry. They haven't received enough food because we are supposed to provide, for example, food every month, enough for a month, for a period of 4 months, once a month. but in some camps, in some areas, people have just received twice, yet the response plan is phasing out next month. So we have this huge gap and very big and unmet needs. So as you can see, the orange color in the graph on my right, the orange represents the total amount of resources received per cluster. So food security is the cluster that has received quite substantial amount of money, though it's not even half of the total requirement for the cluster, but at least they have received a substantial amount as compared to the other clusters, and seconded by the health cluster and the shelter and camp management cluster. So we still have a big gap in all the clusters as presented on the graph. We have ongoing humanitarian requirements, UNHCR's, donors, national NGOs, religious groups, as well as the private sector. The private sector include the individuals who manage to mobilize some resources and support the affected people. So we have 32 of the international NGOs, 32 international government ministries are on the ground, and 9 UN agencies are also providing support. And the type of support being provided include food, and these are cereals like maize flour, rice, and the pulses, the beans, the cowpeas. Some are also providing cooking oil and the corn soya bread for the under 5 children, as well as the pregnant and the lactating women. For shelter, the support that is being provided is in tents, though we have managed to provide just a few because tents are very expensive. And for us to maximize the budget, we had to settle for mostly tarpaulins and the plastic sheets. And education is also providing tents for learning spaces, protection. They're providing psychosocial therapy, dignity kids to girls and the women, sexual and reproductive health services, prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse services. For the transport cluster, they are providing transport services for the delivery of relief items. WASH are providing mobile toilets. As I've indicated that we have a big gap in terms of wash facilities, sanitary facilities. So we have some partners, for example, UNICEF that and the Meteorological Society that provided a few mobile toilets in Ishkwawa as well as Sanje districts. They also are providing treatment, water treatment chemicals, water collection and storage buckets, and other wash facilities. And OSHA supplies. For the health cluster, they're providing mobile clinics in the areas where the health facilities have been affected and not functional, as well as in the camps. They're also providing cholera awareness campaigns and the treatment, COVID-19 vaccination is also being taken to the people, even those who are in the displacement sites. Nutrition, providing CSB to pregnant and lactating women as well as children under 5, though they haven't done much because they provided this once when they got support from the Feed the Children organization. So in all the clusters, we have big gaps, and people are not supported as required because we are not able to mobilize enough resources. In conclusion, I would like to mention a few challenges that we are meeting as a department. Mostly it's inadequate funding to meet the prioritized needs of the affected people. Let me mention that those needs that are in the response plan, they are prioritized. It's not like we have budgeted for all the needs. No, we prioritize them. Yeah, so even though we prioritized to minimize or to reduce the number of needs so that we could concentrate on those that are really important, critical, but still we could not mobilize enough funding. Partners and donors are not forthcoming to provide the resources for the implementation of the response plan, although they were involved in the development of the response plan as well as the assessment of the impact and the needs of the people. And most of the areas were inaccessible, and it delayed the provision of humanitarian response to the affected people. So some of the affected people stayed 3 to 4 months without being reached with humanitarian support, not because there was there were no surprise, but because the area was not accessible. And we do not have access to air transport because for the government, I think the helicopters that are functional, they are very small that they could only carry 4 to 5 bags or 50 kg bags of maize or maize flour. Yet the cost of flying the helicopter was so huge. So for the sake of cost benefit analysis, we could not use them. And the hiring was also costly. We tried to do that at some point, but the fuel that was required, it was so much that we thought that we could spend a lot of money on something that we could only reach a few people. So yeah, but now almost every affected person has been supported at least with food once, and that I'm sure of. Yeah, and the last one is the impact of Cyclone Gombe that has affected the country just 2 weeks ago on 12th. Yeah, this has compounded the situation. The roads that were not accessible then, and that started being accessible when after 2 or 3 weeks after Cyclone Storm Anna, they have hit again, especially in Sanje, Mulanje and Palombe, because these are the worst affected districts by Cyclone Gombe, and the roads are now completely impassable. And this is also making it difficult for delivery of humanitarian support to the affected areas because there are camps, new camps in some of the districts. For example, in Palombe, there were just 3 camps during the tropical storm Anna, but now there are 18 camps. And the people that they were affected by Anna, but they were not displaced, and their homes were not completely demolished. But with the cyclone Gombe, most of the people, over almost 5,000 households, have lost their homes in Palombe alone. So now the situation is a bit complicated, because even those who went back to start reconstructing and even working in the fields, they have also lost the homes that they managed to elect, and even some who had gone back to the fields, planting tomatoes and vegetables as a source of livelihood, and these have been washed away. From the affected people themselves, it looks like tropical cyclone Gombe has affected them more than tropical storm Anna. So the situation is really getting bad. Yeah, so having said that, thank you very much for listening. Over.
Thank you so much, Natasha, for that presentation. Natasha has actually given us a highlight on how Malawi is responding and the effects of Storm Anna, and how vulnerable populations are being traumatized, they are being disoriented, they have been affected psychosocially, and they need the support. And he also has highlighted how 77 partners from different organizations have actually supported Malawi on the storm and the need for continuous support on the effects of this storm, of this storm, as she has also highlighted that the storm is still going on. We started with Cyclone Anna, and now we have gone into Cyclone Gombe, which has also actually affected some of the rescue situation that was happening, like rehabilitation of some roads. I was compelled to go into the next agenda, which was question and answer, but I'm being compelled to call on the next speaker before we open for question and answer. I've seen some questions in the chat box from Bamus, but I'm really compelled, if you would allow me, that I would call on the next speaker from the Scottish government, who is also going to speak on the Scottish government support. So please allow me to call on the next speaker before we go to question and answer, so that we can have question and answer for the three speakers after the next speaker has spoken. And just also a kind reminder that the next speaker from the Scottish government has 5 minutes to speak, and all the other speakers will have 10 minutes. So please, let's stick to time. And Neil from the Scottish government, please, you have the floor for 5 minutes, and then we'll have the question and answer afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aswela Bandri. I'm Neil McCumesty. If you haven't met me before, I am the new Malawi Development Officer from the Scottish Government, and I'm also joined by Tasha, Boardman, and Joanna Keating, who are also going to be here to answer any questions you might have. So thank you, Clara and Noel, for that really useful update. It was good to get the figures, some really sobering statistics on the level of support that's required in response to this storm. So the theme of the discussion today is listening to Malawi. So I hope to speak a bit about how we have worked with our partners in responding to the crisis as the Scottish Government. So I'll give a brief overview of the funding that Minister Gray recently announced, and then Tasha will also be here to talk about our approach to the funding and why we've responded in the way we have. And of course, happy to answer any questions, as Linda said, at the end. So sadly, Tropical Storm Anna is another example of the increasing impact rapidly changing climate is having on vulnerable communities. As Noel outlined at the start, the region's increasingly being struck repeatedly by severe storms and cyclones in recent years, and these have taken, a number of lives, destroyed homes, infrastructure, crops, and displaced a large number of people. So historically here at the Scottish Government, we've got a long history of responding to weather emergencies in Malawi, and we've provided over £1.5 million since 2015. And in addition to that, we've also got our £1 million per year humanitarian emergency fund, which hopes to provide effective assistance to humanitarian crises across the globe. So how are we responding to the current crisis due to Storm Anna? And of course, our thoughts and best wishes are with all 1 million Malawians who have been reported to be affected by this disaster. You know, it's in challenging times like this that our strong relationship between Scotland and Malawi has to translate into practical support. The First Minister wrote to President Chakwera recently, offering her sincere condolences as well from the people of Scotland. And also Minister McCallan wrote expressing condolences following the tragic loss of 11 participants during the Storm Anna flooding from the climate change programme, Malawi, that we fund through our Climate Justice Fund. So I'm pleased to announce, for those who haven't heard, that the Scottish Government will be providing £400,000, which is approximately 428 million Malawi kwacha, towards the Red Cross, Red Crescent Society Storm Anna appeal. And I'm really pleased that the Red Cross will be here today to talk a bit more about that response. So just to clarify, that's an additional money from our £10 million that we have committed to our International Development Programme, and our 1 million from the Humanitarian Emergency Fund. So I'll not speak too much. As I say, we've got the Red Cross who are joining us later, but this will contribute to their wider relief effort to address the needs of 161,000 people. So initially the response will address immediate needs of families displaced in camps and recover from this initial crisis phase, and then will expand forward so that families can return and rebuild their homes and livelihoods. And hopefully in the longer term, this will strengthen their resilience to future shocks. So I look forward to hearing more about that. So I'll pass over to Tasha, who will talk more about why what the approach we've taken. So over to you, Tasha. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. I guess just as Neil has already outlined, the approach we've taken to this emergency funding to Malawi this time in relation to the floods is a little bit different to how we've provided funding in the past. So I guess the key priority for us was making sure that we were working very closely with officials from the government of Malawi, particularly those in the disaster management affairs team, and so we want to ensure that we're taking advice from them, and that any support provided by the Scottish Government aligned perfectly with the plans of the Government of Malawi and their own response coordination on the ground. And I guess this is in line with the principles that we published last year as part of our review to international development that we did in the Scottish Government in light of COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement. Apologies. So, I think in these times it's really important that we, really work to strengthen our partnerships and connections with our partner governments and make sure that any support that we provide is practical and appropriate. So when the storm hit, as Neil's already mentioned, we immediately received reports from grant partners on the ground in Malawi, images and videos. And then on the 27th of January, we were aware of the appeal from President Chakwera for humanitarian assistance from the international donor community. So it was at that point that triggered us to think about any support that the Scottish Government could provide. Unfortunately, we didn't have any money left in our International Development Fund at that point, but we did find alternative funding that was available elsewhere within the Scottish Government that was made available to us for this. So, living by our principles of being partner country led and innovative and adaptable, we wanted to make sure that we were listening to Malawians on the ground and ensure that our response was appropriate and coordinated with national strategies, as I've mentioned. So immediately, on that very same day that President Chakwera made that announcement, we contacted the Government of Malawi. At first, we contacted our contacts in the economic planning and development team, where we have quite strong relationships due to sort of project management of Scottish Government projects on the ground, and they kindly put us in touch with Commissioner Kalemba in the Department for Disaster Management. And so with that, we sought advice from the Government of Malawi on how the Scottish Government may best provide support on the ground in response to the tragic impact of the floods. And they had suggested that we provide funding to the Malawi Red Cross Society, who were supporting the government in their national strategy with regards to the flood efforts on the ground. They also gave us contact details for the Malawi Red Cross Society. So we also set up a call with them to get a broader understanding of the scale of the disaster and what the emergency response need was at that time. Simultaneously, we also contacted our Scottish Government Humanitarian Emergency Fund panel. We did this following feedback from stakeholders that we had following the response that the Scottish Government provided to Malawi in relation to the floods in 2019 following Cyclone Idai. And so we wanted to make sure that we were also consulting, our experts on the HEF panel, and made sure that we wanted to see if they would be able to assist us in coordinating the Scottish Government response. But made clear that we had been given a clear steer from the Government of Malawi, listening to our partners in the Global South in terms of how they thought we would be able to best provide any support. I won't talk too long to this process, but a long story short, ultimately it was decided that a decision was taken by the Scottish Government, with support from the HEF panel, to provide funding to the British Red Cross via the HEF panel, which that, as Neil's already mentioned, that funding is to form part of that overall appeal run by the International Federation of the Red Cross, which is supporting the Malawi Red Cross with their response on the ground. Overall, I think we're pretty pleased with the outcome of our response. We were able to support Malawi, and we are able to support Malawi in the response to the devastating floods. Of course, the response goes much broader than Scottish Government funding, but in terms of the support that we have provided, it was led by the Global South, it was led by our partners in the Government of Malawi in response to their own strategy. And we do think that the response was timely due to our strengthened connections made with the Government of Malawi, which MaSP have been a great support to us within that, and it's something that we hope to build upon going forward. But of course, we can always do better, so we welcome any thoughts and feedback and any questions that anybody has today. So thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Tasha and Neil. If we have any questions and comments, please can we put them in the chat box so that we move with time. And that's the Scottish Government support on this storm Anna, and £400. Thank you so much, Scottish Government, for that support. Yeah, moving on with our agenda, we have question and answer time now, and we have a question in the chat box. Mavuto Bamus, would you like to ask your question, please?
Well, thank you so much, Linda. Apologies for the short delay there. But first of all, like I have indicated in the chat box, I wish to commend the Department of Disaster Preparedness, but also for colleagues at the MEC offices for the fantastic work that these people are doing. And I'm saying this out of evidence, including some of the players who are in there, including EGENCO. These people are really doing a lot of work. But now my specific question relates to accountability measures. We've had some lapses here and there in the use of public finances, some incidents of corruption being reported, or mismanagement of funds. Now it really becomes very unfortunate if a public finance mismanagement is to happen in the area of disaster management, because this is exactly the place where people really need help. People really need the money to count. Every single penny must make a difference to the communities that are suffering the effects of the cyclones and the climate change effects. Now, specifically, there is my question. What are the specific accountability measures, or even additional measures that the government departments have put in place to make sure that there is value for money, there is no corruption, and that every single cent makes a difference? And this question also goes to funds or public money circulating within the non-governmental sectors, including international NGOs, the private funds, and what have you. because sometimes we also do hear of cases of funds being mismanaged in the context of NGOs and some private funds. So that is my area of concern and the question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mavuto, for the question. Natasha, would you like to take the question?
Yeah. Thank you very much for your question. Though it's difficult for me to answer on the part of resources spent by other prayers. But let me mention that for the Department of Disaster Management Affairs, the resources that we receive from government is subject to audit. We are audited. Then we also have some auditors that come to check how we are doing our transaction. Apart from that, the procurement process goes through the PPDA, and before we do anything with the money, they have to prove. And we have a list of pre-qualified suppliers that we go through. And that is for the funds that come from the government. And when we do the procurement, when we're doing the distribution, it's not the department that does the distribution. We just procure and take the supplies to the district councils. It's the district councils that do the actual distribution. For the funds that come from the donors, especially the donations, for example, we had a donation from the ministry, the embassy, the Chinese embassy, and also from the FTH Bank. And we do the procurement following the same laid down procurement procedures through the PPDA. And we also make sure that we report back to the donor. It's one of the requirements. Apart from that, we also every quarter publish in the newspaper all the donations that we have received, so that the public is aware of what we received and where the donation has gone to. And in terms of the support that does not go through the, before I go to that, I should also mention that the available resources that I've mentioned in my presentation does not necessarily that they were all in cash, somewhere in kind. I'll give you an example for Valley Logistics. They donated relief supplies with about $400,000 US, but this was not cash. They bought themselves and they just handed over to DoDMA, to the district councils through DoDMA. So this, for example, is $400,000 US, which is almost $350 million US. When you hear the value of the money, people think that we have all those, but it's in kind. We only had probably 3 donations in cash, and we had the conditions on how the cash should be spent. Yeah, coming to the donations that do not go through DoDMA, it's difficult for us to trace that, because all we do is direct them where they can do their donation, because they do their donation on their own. For the NGOs, it's a bilateral between the NGO and the donor. So all we do is guide them where there's huge needs, where there are gaps, and we direct them to the district councils so that they can also, the district councils can also direct them to the communities. But as to how much they've been given, how they have spent the money on what, it's difficult for us to trace. So we cannot, I cannot give you like, I will assure you that there's accountability and transparency or value for money, anything like that. I can't, but only those from through government, I can, as I've already said. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Allow me to ask that the questions that are in the chat box, the speakers would respond in the chat box, and then we can move on with the next speakers that we have. I would like now to call upon Julius from CISONECC to give us his presentation. And then after that, we'll have back-to-back presentations and we'll have questions at the end. And then as they are presenting, we can always ask the questions in the chat box and we'll get back to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Good afternoon to all and good evening. I just wanted to say thank you to MaSP for inviting me to this session. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Loud and clear.
Oh, thank you. So I was given a task to just give a simple highlight on the issues to do with the disaster risk management bill. Not necessarily for me to present what the draft disaster management bill is all about, but maybe what could be the implications of maybe not having the bill enacted, what are some of the challenges that we are facing in the absence of the bill, and why do we think the disaster risk management bill is very important. So I have a few minutes because I need to jump into another meeting, so apologies on that. Firstly, let me just indicate that Malawi has been in the process of developing the disaster risk management bill for the past maybe 10 years. My first interaction with the draft bill was in 2014, and I still remember the time that we were interacting with the consultant to give our inputs and also supporting DoDMA in the later stages of the processes. So the idea of developing the new disaster risk management bill is to ensure that we, as a country, we are being very proactive in terms of our management of disasters. As most of you are aware, we are using 1991 Disaster Relief Act, which is usually focusing or mostly focusing on response, and it leaves out in so many areas, emphasis on so many areas like the rehabilitation issues, risk management, and risk reduction issues. So if you have time, please consult the Disaster Relief Act of 1991, and then you'll note that the focus is usually on relief. And just to say that it was actually enacted because of the Palombe disaster of 1991 to help the country to mobilize towards relief towards the disaster that happened during that year. So over the past 10 years, as I indicated, the risk management bill has been in draft form until now. It has been in so many stages, going to the to the Ministry of Justice, coming back to DoDMA, and then going to the cabinet committees, coming back to DoDMA. We don't know what stage it is right now. Of course, we informally we were told that there's still some process between DoDMA and the Ministry of Justice to finalize this bill. But as stakeholders and civil society, we've been calling for this bill to be enacted like yesterday, because we know the challenges that you are facing. So the following are some of the implications of why we, or that may be there as a result of us not having finalized the bill and also to enact the same. First of all, as I indicated, our country is more of in a very reactive approach towards disasters. So you have heard here the presentation. We are running up and down trying to respond, which is not bad, but after that, we still need to have some activities that will actually be helping our country to move towards a more proactive approach, where we can be working with the communities to strengthen their capacities, reduce their vulnerabilities, and then also eventually we'll actually reduce the losses and damages. So that's number one. More if we don't have that disaster risk management bill, it means we are not focusing more on reducing vulnerabilities. And also we will actually be having a lot of or an increase in the losses and damages over the years. I hope most of us have been able to access the IPCC latest report, which is talking about, is predicting what's going to come in the future. So if Noel was presenting here to say, before we used to have cyclones, but they were not all that heavy in terms of magnitude and extent and reaching Malawi. I think it was maybe happening once in a while. Now we're talking about several of them happening in the past 3 years. So what lies ahead in the future, I think we all know, and we need to actually make sure that we are being proactive by reducing the vulnerabilities. So why the bill? I mean, it's the same issue. As a country, we need to be very proactive in terms of addressing the issues in the disaster risk management sector. The draft bill that is being proposed has several other key provisions that when we enact it, it will actually help us to move towards the proactive approach. For example, it emphasizes more on the risk financing and risk management. So, for example, the bill has some proposals related to issues to do with the vote for the disaster risk management. So proactively, the sector can have resources of their own being coming from the parliament, which is not the case at the moment. Natasha is here, can also actually testify to that. We have the unforeseen vote, which we use as a country to actually manage disasters, especially during responses. But that is a vote that does not really get us anywhere, apart from just running around to do response. The bill proposes actually a clear structure in terms of decentralization. I know the decentralization has started already happening within the sector, but I think we still have to, it needs to be backed up by this new act, which when enacted, then I think we'll have proper structures that are actually, will actually be working with within the sector. The bill, as I indicated, emphasizes on risk reduction and risk management. So that's already helping us to reduce the vulnerabilities that are there, but also in enhancing the capacities of the communities and citizens of the country towards the impacts of cyclones and any eventualities may result into disasters. And that will help us to be very prepared as a country will focus on rehabilitation, and also it will help us to build the resilience of the households, the resilience of the communities, the districts, including the resilience of the country. So eventually, we might be reducing the losses and damages because, for instance, this resilience I'm talking about is in general. If you looked at the report that Natasha was actually presenting, there were so many damages, not only to maybe households infrastructure, but including public infrastructure like roads, bridges, and others, which if we take the proactive approach, we are actually going to be ascertaining, making sure that all these infrastructure, including public infrastructure, are climate proofed. And by the end of the day, we are having a resilient infrastructure. So if we have disasters, then or any hazard manifesting itself into a disaster, then we might have a reduced number of losses to the livelihoods, reduced number of losses to the infrastructure, houses, and including public infrastructure like roads and bridges. So I think that's what I can say in terms of why we need the bill. And because of time, if there's any question, please let me know. You can drop in the chat box. I can be able to attend to that. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Julius. Yeah, please send the comments and questions in the chat box. So as we proceed with the next speakers, and I will humbly ask if the next speakers could condense their presentations to 5 minutes so that we are able to catch up with time. The next speaker will hear from EGENCO. Please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Let me just upload this presentation quickly. Can you see my screen?
And please introduce yourself. We can't see your screen yet. So as we are waiting, you can be introducing yourself because I didn't introduce you.
All right, I am Moses Gwaza, Senior Public Relations Officer for EGENCO in Malawi. As I will be uploading my screen, I just have to mention that EGENCO is a public company. Please let me know if you happen to see my screen.
We can see your screen, but we can't see the presentation yet.
Yes, we are able to see. Thank you.
Can you see it?
Yeah, we are able to see the screen.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. So I was just giving a background to the company. I think in the interest of time, I will not focus much on the background of the company, but I will focus much on the effects, the damage that happened due to the cyclone Anna. So just for those that are not aware what EGENCO is a public company.
Moses, can you show your presentation, please? You're showing your screen. We are seeing all the documents. We need to see your presentation.
Oh, okay. Let me try to do it again. Are you able to see it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Right, so I was saying that EGENCO is a public company which was established by an act of parliament. It started its operations on 1st January 2017, and the mandate is that it generates and sell power to the national grid. So like I said, I will not focus much on the background, but rather just go straight to the damage that was caused by the cyclone Anna. But I must mention that this slide, our current capacity as a company is that we have 442.2 megawatts, of which 391 is hydro, and then 52.7 megawatts is the diesel generation, as well as we also have an off-grid solar 1.3 at the two islands of Likoma and Kizumulu. So out of the 391.2, we've lost the Kapijira Power Station, which is the 129.6 megawatts, almost 130 megawatts. And this is a major station within the hydro station, actually the major station in the country. So because of that, we have challenges in terms of power generation in the country. So let me focus much on the storm that happened. Yeah, so as my colleagues have said from DoDMA and the other places, the storm really, for us, we started experiencing the effects on the 24th. That's when it started continuing heavily until 25th. And because of that, we had flooding. This picture that I'm showing you now is a picture that was taken a week before the storm started, because we were doing some maintenances. So we lowered the pond, and usually when we do works like this, we take pictures for references. So this is a picture that was taken exactly a week before the disaster. So what you're seeing on the left is the training dike. This is a structure that was diverting water to come to the intake. The intake, you can see it on the far end there. And we also had this fuse plug. So I will show you the impact that, the damage that was caused to these two structures. So the other one is a training dike, the other one is the dam structure. And at the very end, this side, we have a fuse plug. So after the cyclone, this is what happened. The fuse plug was washed away. The training dike was also completely washed away, meaning that the dam can no longer hold water for power generation. So that's the impact that we suffered from the cyclone. As you can see, the dike is completely washed away. Even the fuse plug also washed away, including the intake that was under construction by the Shire River irrigation scheme project. All of that together with everything was completely washed away. This is a wide angle view of what happened. As you can see now, instead of the water being diverted to the intake, it's just going through straight on its original course. This is the original course of the river. So because the dike is washed away, the dam structure is washed away, we can no longer divert water for power generation, and the dam can no longer hold water. So that's why we have 129.6 megawatts out of the system. And because of that, we have a serious shortfall of power in the country. As we speak, because of the loss of this power station, ESCOM is implementing load shedding. As of now, it's about 6 hours every day. People have no electricity because of this impact that we've suffered because of the cyclone that we had. So as you can see, part of the dam is completely washed away. So there is need for huge resources for us to repair temporarily, because what we are doing now is to make sure that we quickly repair this dam so that we can resume generation. But after that, we are now planning to redesign the whole dam structure so that now it can accommodate, or it can withstand the cyclones that have become now part of us. In the original design, when they were designing this station, they didn't anticipate the kind of cyclones that we're experiencing now. So that's why even the fuse plug, which was designed to wash away, because of the severity of the storm that we've experienced this time around, it washed away, but it also affected the actual dam structure. So the plan is that we do the restoration quickly, and then while we do redesigning, so that we can construct a dam that can withstand the future cyclones. So in short, I think I would explain with that. I would explain that that's the damage that we suffered as a country, and especially as a company as well. So because of that, we are not able to generate electricity. At the same time, as a company, we are also losing revenue. We can't, because we can't generate any power from this station, it means that we are also losing revenue as the company. So we need, estimates show that we need about 15 to 18 billion for us to able to temporarily or to repair the damage so that we can resume generation while we are looking at a longer term solution to have the whole dam structure redesigned. So I think in a nutshell, I would explain that that's what has happened to us as a GENCO and as a country. As you can see, some of the pipes that were there that we are using to remove silt, they were dislodged. So we experienced quite a huge damage in our dam structure to an extent that we really can't generate electricity at the moment. Let me stop there if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Moses, for that presentation. Please share that presentation so that we send it to everyone who was on this meeting, and so that they can really appreciate the efforts that you have put through, so that you can recover, as well as the impact that you have actually gotten from the storm. I would like to call upon Aston Mulwafu from Red Cross with their presentation on relief operations and agent need from Red Cross. Please have the floor, and please let's continue to ask our questions in the chat box, and also presenters respond to the questions in the chat box. I've seen that there are responses there. Thank you so much. And also, if we have just comments, let's have those comments as well. Aston, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm trying to share my screen quickly so that I can. Okay.
And if you could compress your presentation to 5 minutes, apologies, we have actually overshot on the time that we had planned to be on this meeting, but we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
No problem. So I will not talk much about the overview of the cyclones. My colleagues from DoDMA, DCCMS made it very clear. So I will straight away go to what, as Malawi Red Cross Society has been supporting to respond to the needs of the affected communities. So firstly, we supported in development of early warning messages to be disseminated across the country. And this was the weather alerts, which DCCMS shared. We also facilitated dissemination of anticipatory actions targeting 10 districts. That's Salima, Lilongwe, Zomba, Palombe, Mulanje, Nsanje, Chikwawa, Mangochi, Tioro, and Blantyre. Again, we've been engaging our volunteers on ground to help with further dissemination in the local communities where we anticipated that the impacts of the cyclones would be heavy. So they used public address systems, they used jingles, they used community radios. We used volunteers also to undertake door-to-door messaging. Again, we also had to support those that were affected with assorted non-food items. We supported close to 2,500 beneficiaries, and they received items in terms of tarpaulins, blankets, buckets, soap, hygiene kits, sleeping mats, and tents, particularly targeting the camps. In some instances, some communities where we were requested to do so. We also supported sensitization in camps on issues around PGI, protection of gender and inclusion, health and WASH, including nutrition sensitive information. Supported also data management in collaboration with government for the EOC, which was established in Blantyre. So we worked hand in hand with government to ensure that we follow through all the needs of the affected population and also be able to respond. But also we collaborated with DoDMA and other actors to undertake the detailed assessment in various districts. We also supported in some of the districts, especially in Ncheo and Baraka, where we reached with cash transfers targeting 771 beneficiaries to meet their household basic needs and emergency shelter. So we have a crisis modifier fund through ECO program, which we have. So we had to activate this fund to respond to the needs of the households in Ncheo and Baraka. So this is EU funded project, which we used. Again, supported multiple cash transfers to 881 households to meet their livelihoods and basic needs. Separate fund on conditional cash was provided to 335 households to cover for emergency shelter. So this was funding from our Red Cross movement under the DREF program, which is a disaster relief emergency fund. So we had to mobilize those resources. So the 881 as well as 335 were targeted from Salima. Remember, we had first incident of disasters in Salima. So that fund, when we had applied, we were given a go-ahead and we responded to those needs. Let me just share the strategic movement, strategic areas of focus under the recovery phase. So we are planning to support households with shelter and the essential household items. So we're targeting 3 districts as of now, based on the appeal that we had requested from our movement partner as well as other regular donors. So in total, we're targeting 13,200 households. This is from Palombe, Nsanja, and Chikwawa districts. These are our priority districts which we have targeted with this recovery phase. We, of course, realize that Cyclone Gombe has brought other needs in the same districts, but also other districts. But we are moving first with what we had sought approval. But as we're still fundraising, we hope to grow our scope. So the 13,000 households will be targeted with shelter in terms of short, medium, and long-term shelters and settlement. But also we seek to ensure that those communities in disaster and crisis affected areas restore their safety and well-being. We also plan to support technically and guide them in terms of safe shelter designs and settlement so that we really improve the building the way they are built in the communities. So we're using PASS approach, but especially approach to safe shelters. So that's shelter. So we also have a component on livelihoods and basic needs. We're also targeting the same 13,000 households. So we anticipate to see communities, especially in disaster and crisis affected areas, to restore and strengthen their livelihoods. We will do some vocational training skills, but also productive assets to improve their income in the areas. So we have unpacked these livelihoods. We have crop production, we have livestock, we have VSL, we have even other life skills trainings, which will be part of vocational skills. And we also seek to strengthen and enhance livelihood security through food production and income generating activities. Our third and fourth strategic areas of focus would be WASH and the healthy interventions. So we'll be working still with the same number of households. So in terms of health, we seek to support percent of affected population reached through awareness sessions to improve their healthy habits, but also percent of targeted people reached with hygiene promotion activities. Here, I'm just looking into wider output, but in terms of activities that we'll be undertaking, we'll also include dislodging of latrines, we'll be installing boreholes, we will also rehabilitate some of the school latrines. There is one donor who would want to support us to support the schools which were heavily affected. So it's an integrated approach that we're undertaking on WASH and health. We also seek to undertake some disaster risk reduction interventions, that is to ensure that climate change impacts are mitigated through community preparedness actions, early recovery and resilience programs. We also seek to do climate change impact mitigated through early recovery and resilience building interventions. We would also undertake cross-cutting issues, particularly protection, gender and inclusion, ensure that protection issues are mainstreamed as we move through. Lastly, we are facing challenges in terms of magnitude of disasters have increased in scope and frequencies, hence requiring huge emergencies in humanitarian assistance. Also limited financial resources to respond to the needs of the affected population, because like the way we've been experiencing the trends of disasters is becoming difficult to track properly. Finally, I wish to acknowledge the pledge from Scottish government as well as other donors to support Malawi Red Cross to respond to the needs through the emergency appeal which we had raised. Thank you so much. Let me end there.
Thank you so much, Aston, for the wonderful presentation. Yes, so we had very wonderful presentations from the Met Department, from DoDMA, from CISONECC, from EGENCO, from Red Cross. We also had a wonderful news from the Scottish government about the £400,000 that is coming to Malawi to assist us with this cyclone. We are really grateful to the Scottish government, and we thank the Scottish government for this support. And we are also thankful to the Red Cross for receiving this grant, so that we do see change from the disaster that we have been faced. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And we really appreciate you being with us. And the questions that have been posted in the chat box, let's be assured that the presenters will respond to those questions. And the recordings of this discussion will be posted online. The video which will be uploaded on YouTube. And also to just say thank you so much that you have been with us for this time that we have chatted together and have opened our eyes with the highlights of what is actually happening in our country, Malawi, as well as our friends from Scotland being with us. We really appreciate the support and also the encouragement that you have given us. As you can see from your screen, we have 2 questions. Please respond to those questions. We really appreciate your feedback, and we appreciate you being here with us this time around. Thank you so much. We are going to close now. Thank you.